temptation when you get the vibration. Won't do you no good, won't do you no good. Better start running when you hear the man coming. Won't do you no good, won't do you no good. You don't mind, you don't mind, and I never mind. Let them all break you, let the feeling come take you. Won't do you no good, won't do you no good. You know I got fever, so when you hit me right, you know you might as well. I won't do you no good, won't do you no good. I said kiss your baby goodbye. Come on, love, it's alright. Heaven knows they wanna break you apart. Oh yeah, kiss your baby goodbye. Come on, love, it's alright. Never know unless you give it a try. Temptation when you get the vibration. Won't do you no good, won't do you no good. You can tell I got fever, try to shake it off, try it all you want. Won't do you no good, won't do you no good. And I said kiss your baby goodbye. Come on love, it's alright. Heaven knows they wanna break you apart. Oh yeah, kiss your baby goodbye. Come on love, it's alright. You never know unless you give it a try.
Nuance. Noun. A subtle difference in or shade of meaning. Expression. Or sound.
Nuance. Noun. A subtle difference
Nuance.
in or shade of meaning.
Noun.
Expression.
A subtle
or sound.
difference in or shade of meaning.
Noun.
Expression. Or sound.
Episode of Nuance is this episode of Nuance is another bonus episode, as Roberto and I just keep getting caught up in dealing with life. But we will eventually get back on track. But bonus episodes are fun, and this one is with Daryl Chambers, who hosts the podcast Words of a Warrior. This podcast of his interviews modern-day warriors ranging from athletes to academics, but who all embrace the fights in life with certainty and confidence and rise to the occasion each time. What allows them to block out naysayers and define all the odds? Well, as I say his line there, I'm not quite sure that I would have blocked out the naysayers, that I have blocked out the naysayers and defied the odds. I'm not even sure quite what I've accomplished or what battle I've won. Hell, I'm not even so sure what the fight is about at this stage. I need people like you and Daryl to remind me of that and engage the hard topics. And Daryl seems to have no desire to shy away from anything, so I am quite optimistic about the future of our discussions, at least. The Words of a Warrior podcast can be found on iTunes, Podchaser, YouTube, and more. And also, please follow Daryl on Instagram at InPowerUK, INPOWERUK. It is good to have these types of conversations, and this hits on some controversial issues, but I do feel it is still preaching to the choir a little bit. And I really wish we could be talking to others and be on podcasts where people are entirely different from us. I feel as though Daryl and I are quite similar at the core, or hell, I guess all of us are. What I mean to say is Daryl and I speak the same language, so we are able to quickly get on and stay on the core of the issue. And generally it feels as though anyone who is ready to engage in dialogues will have no problem understanding that these discussions have no desire to offend anyone or to judge anyone. A lot of what I do is not judgment, it's explanation. And just because I'm explaining something doesn't mean I have a position on its morality or I'm judging what has taken place. I'm merely explaining it. So these conversations are about exploring and testing our philosophies and digging into what we are really saying and doing with something or some idea, not what we wish it were or hope it is doing, but what is really going on. The most common one lately is the race is not a real topic, which we do get into a little bit here. Ultimately, I'm not sure it matters that it is not real. The main problem with its use is that it's a label. Whenever you categorize people into labels, not only are you setting the stage for discrimination and prejudice, you assure its existence. My wife and I were having a discussion where another version of this came up. And the category was the well-meaning labeled of being disabled. Now, it is very good and helpful that those labeled special needs often get societal assistance. But as soon as you group people abled and disabled, not only are you setting the stage for disability discrimination and prejudice, you assure it's continued and create an outgroup, the able-bodied people, who will also be discriminated against. Then you will get the internal labeling and discrimination within the disabilities to mental illnesses, amputations, hormonal imbalances, and on, to go into, well, who is more disabled, and well, this disability suffers more than this, and thus requires more assistance, and isn't as good as those people. This is just the way labels work, and this is the same is true of race. The moment you call yourself white or allow others to group you as white, be it through your actions or lack of actions, you set the stage for and necessarily create discrimination against yourself and to be prejudiced against others. If you are this label, say white or black or brown, then everyone else is othered. And then you will get into further division on top of it. Blacks begin to divide on the lightness and darkness, and colorism then add a new layer to prejudice, bias, and tribalism. It's kind of like the God of the gaps, the argument in theory. Like whenever you have two categories, there's some room in the middle, and you create a third, and then there's a room on the side of that third, so now you have five, and on and on and on, because you keep just trying to fill in what's in between the others, instead of recognizing that it's just a complex array and spectrum of the exact same thing mixed together. And all of this, I feel, is what stands in the way of my having broad public discussions about police reform. Despite what many people think, there does not feel like there is much left for me to do until the public discussion shifts. So I've been thinking of something tangible and practical I could do to try and make a difference, and I will talk about that for a bit for those who are interested after the main presentation here with the Words of a Warrior podcast and Daryl Chambers. Enjoy.
I mean, my podcast is called Words of a Warrior, and it talks about, I'll tell you the main reason that I reached out to you, other than a lot of the stuff you cover, I do want to get into that, but I mean, it might not all be in this podcast. We might do another one in the future, but more so it's about your journey and a lot of the stuff you have to overcome to really pursue your fight. I mean, it's called Words of a Warrior. Obviously, every fight's not physical. And really just your mindset going into it. And some of the things I've put down is, I mean, how did you cope with, I'm guessing you had friends in the police force, you was with them for 11 years. So to kind of speak out against what they was doing, you would have lost some friends. And a lot of people in that position would kind of be like, you know what, a lot of my friends are there. I don't agree with it, but I'm just going to speak to maybe my brother, my sister, my family about it. I'm not going to take it out there and put it out there. So it's just stuff like that to really see where your mind was then and where your mind's at now. And then we can just go from there. But and thank you, man. Thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, no problem. I think we have to have these kind of discussions and explore these things as much as I really honestly don't want to, because it involves what we were just saying, like trying to take down that mask and think about what was really going through, honestly, not the projection, because the projection, if I say what people want to hear, that doesn't freaking serve anybody any good. And if I continue to feed a narrative that isn't going to be productive, then you become part of the problem. And I think I have kind of been in a weird place currently because wondering whether I'm actually part of the problem in the way that my approach is, or how it goes with society, and if other people, if what I'm asking of other people is even realistic or not. I mean, it's almost offensive what I'm asking people to do. So how do I go about that? Should I be the messenger? Should somebody be filtering my messages? I really don't know what I'm doing.
No, I get what you're saying. So I guess your struggle is that you want everybody kind of... What you're struggling with is that you want to start, I guess, almost like a movement, would you say? I
want to start a movement towards solutions. So it's not that I have any right ideas or that I'm telling you to follow me. It's I don't want you to follow me either. I want you to question critically everything that I am saying, but the rest of the world around you as well. And if my idea is weak, then let's improve it together. But we have to be a team. And I don't know how bad it is in the UK right now, but in America, we are entirely tribalistic and completely absolved in identity politics. It does not matter what is being said. It matters who it's coming from. So, and I, being a white male, like, I'm seriously, if I hear somebody fucking say as a white male to me one more time, I may be the person that has a violent biological breakdown. But like, we have to get past all that shit. All that shit is the divisiveness that is stopping us from getting to solutions. But when I talk, being a white male, and no one's receptive to that at the moment, do I turn people off just because I'm a white dude saying it? You know, so am I the problem there? Will the oppressed not be able, or am I helping the oppressed find a pathway out of oppression in an environment of identity politics when I'm the exact wrong identity?
Strong. That, I guess, yeah, that's really difficult. And I guess if they don't feel that you know what, Michael hasn't been what we've gone through, and then they see your kind of background, it's like, wait, he was a police officer. He was a US Marine, so yeah, he hasn't experienced what we've experienced. So that could be part of it. And off that, talking about the oppressed and that you haven't gone through what they've gone through, I want to know, a younger Michael A. Wood Jr., how was it growing up for you? What were things like growing up for you? Let's say during your teenage years, what was it like for you?
So, I mean, I am from the predominant group of oppression, which is poverty. And so I grew up a poor kid in mixed race neighborhoods in the suburbs of Baltimore. So, I mean, you could just picture the suburbs of London, very much the same way. Totally mixed race. And growing up in the 90s, we kind of had this conscious racial blindness to us. So even maybe if there were still racial undertones, we were like intentionally repressing them. So I grew up in this environment where that was the goal. The goal was to be racially blind, not see these things, treat everybody by their character. I mean, so we had tons of different friends. I never thought of like black issues as anything. I mean, like, to me, right now, we say really wild shit in America, like, oh my God, we finally have a black superhero in Black Panther. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I grew up with black superheroes left and right. I grew up watching Martin and Sanford and Son, and like all this, like, it was just there. It was part of normal everyday life. We weren't discussing those things. And I think that was blinding us to our systems. And so me, just being a regular kid, I was just trying to live my troubled, poor kid life. We got in trouble with the police. We did drugs. We vandalized shit. You know, I was a regular fucking kid. You know, and what separated me. So, talking about teenage years, the first time I saw the racial thing in the system was that one of my really good friends, AJ, he was black. We both played on the football team, so he was in shape, but he was like this super nice kid, got good grades. I don't think this dude ever started trouble with anyone ever. And we were playing basketball it was in our neighborhood, but it was no trespassing. You know, they said it's closed, and you're like, of course, this is our neighborhood. Screw you. We're playing. We jump the fence. We play basketball. People call the cops. The cops come. Most people run. AJ and I stayed. Like, you know, whatever. Screw that. And they take both of us into custody. The police do. And we go to the back of the car, and the cop only has one set of handcuffs, so he puts AJ in the handcuffs and puts us both in the back of the car. And so we're driving down the street, and AJ is like, why the fuck am I the one in the handcuffs? You know, he's only like 15, but he's like, you motherfucker, you know, talking to the cop. Like, I'm here in handcuffs because I'm black. And it was the first time in life that I was like, you're so right. You know, because I was the troublemaker. I was the one that was way more likely to do something. If somebody was going to run from the cops and, you know, take this dude's gun and throw it or do something, like, it was totally me. It was not him. But that cop was totally blinded to the reality of who we were by his own biases. Now, sure, to me at the time it was a joke, and I'm like, AJ, shut the fuck up. Well, he's going to put me in handcuffs too. You know, so like, but I mean, I did see it kind of start to come up as I was getting older, but I didn't just grow up with that mentality, and I think that really fucked me in the police department, having a racial blindness. It blinded me to the problems. It took me longer to see it.
Got you. So were these two officers that arrested you white at the time?
Yeah, they were white, of course.
There was white. You say of course, but don't you think there's almost a racial blindness or a wall put up, even that black officers would probably still think the same way as white officers in that situation? Do you agree with that?
Totally. Black officers are patently more aggressive towards black suspects than white cops are. That's twofold. I think you have, I think we are more aggressive, white cops are more aggressive to white suspects, actually, on a routine basis, not the extremes, but on a routine basis, because we both see those people as making our group look bad. So we're a little bit more aggressive with them. I mean, NWA said that. Fuck the police, is don't let it be a black and a white one. Like, I thought everyone knew that. Black cop's going to show out, right? It's because, I mean, that's part of the manipulation. I want us to all see that the white cop and the black cop are coming from the same groups of oppression, and white and black are not real things. They're not in DNA. Race is totally designed to divide us. So seeing it that way is a big problem. But a lot of black cops, just in America, in society in general, you grow up thinking that adapting to the system is the way to go. And I don't know if I necessarily object to that. Maybe in some other countries I do, but in America, America is about fundamentally assimilating into the American culture. So slavery, yeah, I mean, you got here through slavery. I get that that's a different beginning, but to fit in America, it is all about assimilation. So, I mean, I get their perspective in that entirely, and I try to remind people as often as possible that the most racist thing I ever heard came from a black cop. He was a Nigerian cop, straight from Nigeria, like an actual immigrant from there, and he was arresting a suspect in South Baltimore, and the suspect looked up and said, I don't understand why you're doing this to me over this bullshit. You are my brother.
And he said, oh, no, 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 no. I am not like you. I come over here on 747. You come over on boat. And I was like, holy fuck. That was the most insane racist thing I've ever heard. But then I learned that, you know, Africans from Africa fucking hate black Americans. And they do see them as the ones they sold away, who were the weak of their society. And like, so this narrative in America of even about like what slavery was, it really, I feel like it pushes us off the path. So it makes us do things like think that black cops are a solution. Making the oppressed the oppressors is what policing does. That is not a solution. You know, you're just going to make black people the oppressors. Next thing you know, you have a black president arresting hundreds of thousands of black men for a crime he openly admitted that he did himself that is completely harmless, just smoking cannabis. You know, so it's not a good thing to have a black female being the one that's cracking the whip. That's not progress. And so my message really, I try to do that, but that's tearing down people's identity. I'm trying to tell you, when you say I'm black, I'm like, I get what you're trying to say, but that's not actually a thing. And if you incorporate that into your identity as to who you are, not just the category that somebody put you in, then I am telling you that you are not who you think you are. And that makes a backfire effect, which says like that even no matter how much evidence I present to that. So, I mean, I could be totally offending you right now, and I don't mean to be.
No, you're
but
not,
in,
you're not.
in the DNA science has been extremely clear for decades. That race is not a thing that's in DNA. It is not objective. You cannot measure it. It is not a thing. What people really means is their ethnicity, and what they really mean is not just their general ethnicity, their specific ethnicity. Because they don't even mean, when they say listen to black people, they don't even mean listen to black people. They mean listening to black people who agree with exactly what I'm saying, and if they're white, also agree with them. So you ultimately just said that just agree with everyone that agrees with you. So we're masking it with all these weird identities as to who we are, instead of just coming clean and presenting solutions like that. We all want to be protected by fear. So white America is very much wants to be protected by their fear. Now, if they fear black men and they fear cities, well, we have to address that. That's a ridiculous thing to fear, but the fear is genuine, and it's the same fear that the vast majority of the black population in a city like Baltimore has, and it's why they keep voting for more police, because it's the only thing that we're presenting as a possible solution to quell our fears. And we're really actually incredibly safe. So it's just fear we're talking about. It's not actual safety. You're pretty safe no matter where you go in the civilized nations right now. So it's all about perceptions. And if we don't get rid of these misperceptions, then we can't present the actual things and address the core of us fearing things and what we actually want to get rid of, which is just the fear like we're comfortable and to know our neighbors well enough.
I mean, there's so many.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many things that I want to cover. I'm going to go back to a point that you made earlier.
Skip all the way to fuckery.
You were saying about black as an identity, and sometimes you ask people who they are, say, I'm a strong black man or whatever. So you was like, cut that. Why then, Michael? Why are you such a keen supporter, or was, I don't know how it is now, of Black Lives Matter? What would you say is different about that movement?
Well, I'm incredibly against Black Lives Matter, the organization, incredibly for Black Lives Matter, the concept, and the grassroots activists that are localized in their cities that are actually on the ground doing the work. I'm very much for the names you will not hear. So those groups, like, you'll hear people say, well, what about crime in Chicago? Where's the groups that are fighting crime in Chicago? There's hundreds, if not thousands of them. Just type it into Google. Like, those are the people that I support a lot. And the reason is because they're just flat out right. Like, I don't have a side. I am trying to improve our situation with solutions. So my focus personally is entrenched in trying to eliminate my biases and prejudices, because they're going to affect my solutions. I'm always going to have them, and my solution will never be right. But the more biases and prejudices I drop, then I can at least get closer to what right is from when I'm offering advice to other people. So when Black Lives Matter says that the criminal justice system is disproportionate and prejudiced against it's black men and you know, just it's a variety, but definitely black males stand out as the worst of that, then they're fucking absolutely right. There's no argument. Like, I mean, so there's a million ways we can go about demonstrating what that is. But I also I've realized that people don't fucking care about data. And we have to focus on emotions and what that means in a real life scenario. And what that means for me is somebody that was racially blind, not a racist bone in my body. I suddenly realized I was carrying out racist actions. Like day in and day out, I participated in the rest of 496 people. Over 400 of them were black males. Obviously completely disproportionate. I know that crime is even and all this is distributed. You know, the drugs are distributed evenly among all communities. It's not that they're the ones doing it. I know it's because I'm here and I've been put here. I can do this wherever I'm put. But I'm being put here. Why am I being put here? So I went on a scholarly endeavor to try and figure out the answer to why I was there, but emotionally I realized that my presence was what was destroying those neighborhoods. Like, even though we think that taking that drug dealer off the corner is a good thing, taking that black male out of the household and causing violent crime, we will all be safer if he stays there selling drugs, because remember, we fear violence. We don't fear drugs. So we actually, our system, am I putting him into jail? Well, I'm using violence to make him more violent and be more likely to commit a violent crime, because he has desperation that's growing as you put him into the prison system. We know that you come out of there more likely to commit a crime than when you go in there. I know that the only reason he's being arrested is because I'm looking at him and I have resources for him. So what I am doing is patently making this neighborhood worse. That money that kid is not taking his money and slinging it, buying gold chains and shit like you see on TV. Yeah, there are a few people that do that, but they are extreme outliers. Most people are doing this shit for a fucking bag of chips and to survive. So when I ended up being an undercover narcotic. Well, it's not undercover because like I wasn't buying drugs. I was hiding. So I was covert surveillance, we'll just call it that way. So I was in a major case narcotics squad, and I ended up watching people in their neighborhoods unknown for weeks on end. Like, I mean, I freaking knew these people. They had no idea I was there.
Was you just walking past them in a car?
No. So I would get there at I'd get there at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd have a van sometimes. And so I would park the van, and it was like tinted out, and I had a camera and stuff. And so I would just sleep in the back until like the sun came up, and you know, so you don't look out of place. And then I would video record everybody all day long, staying in the back of the truck. And then after they are, you know, shut down and go away, that sometime late at night, then I'll finally leave. Or I stayed in vacant places. Like me and this homeless dude were like sharing this vacant, but we never even crossed paths, which was really weird. We would like leave magazines for each other, but I have no idea like where this dude was. We would hide I would hide in all different kinds of places. I didn't like using CIs and stuff like that. I don't like to use snitches. I don't understand why we trust people that we already know are lying to the people that they're talking to. Like, why the fuck am I trusting this dude? So I always figured I had to see it myself. And so I went in there, and I would lay in any environment and sit there all day long trying to watch it myself. But when you're there, you become part of that environment. And so I saw what was happening before the drug dealing, after the drug dealing. I heard the conversations when the masks were off. Every time a cop is there, you know, we were talking about masks at the very beginning of this conversation. The cop is wearing this costume and this mask when he interacts with the drug dealer in the corner, and the drug dealer is doing the same thing. So they're both having these misperceptions of who one another is. And when you think these drug dealers are hard, they're not hardened people. They're incredibly vulnerable. They're fearful at all times. They're desperate. They're doing things that they don't want to be doing. They want a way out of there. Most of them are doing it to get out. And I understand they may make a rap song saying that that's not what they want to do, but that's the fucking mask, man. If you have to embrace it if you're trapped in it. So yeah, but whenever they get a choice, they don't fucking make $1 million a year on a rap album and then stay in West Baltimore. They move out to the county and get out like everybody else does. They're trying to leave, you know. So just seeing everybody as the human that they were in the neighborhood that they were in, I then realized that when I took him out of that neighborhood, that I was harming it. That the little brother didn't have his big brother there. New crew could move in that was more violent. In mobs made their neighborhood safe in New York, believe it or not, because you kept the violence in other areas. That's the wrong way to do it. But still, when you have strong neighborhood controls, you do keep the violence down on its own, and you keep crime down. And even if it's just an assault, a cop takes a minor transgression and escalates it to this big, huge offense where people got to go to jail and get crimes and offenses. But the neighborhood uncle, dude, he can settle that beef and make sure everybody's cool and quell the situation in a way that a cop can't, because those masks don't have to be on anymore. And so, we can just address whatever, because I will rant for fucking ever, so control me.
This is it. This is your time. Tell the world what they need to know. This is your time, Michael. Friggin' crazy. So, you were saying you was doing racist acts daily.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't categorize what you was doing as. Do you really see that as a racist act, or do you just think it's the prejudice because of the environment you was in and the people that you was watching? Yeah.
Why did I body check him that hard? He was like $1.15, and I would apologize. I'm sorry, I just didn't fucking know. I did not mean it that way. But so those kind of things that are in our culture are there, and that's what I was seeing at the time. I wasn't able to formulate these things. I didn't understand until, 5 to 10 years later when I started studying this, because what happened was I thought I just felt it was wrong, and I saw these bad signs, but I thought we were super unprofessional. So I went and I spent about a year when I was a sergeant, with the help of a couple of supervisors, covering my back and making sure I didn't mess up my job duties. And I sat there, and while I was doing the lieutenant's test, I sat down and did this whole thing for perfect policing. It's 518 pages.
Is that the promotional handbook guide for police and law enforcement?
Yeah.
Check
right.
It out,
So
you can buy it. Yeah.
yeah, so good. Yeah, so it's still out there. I wanted to make sure everybody had. Part of that was about leveling the playing field, because there's a lot of internal racism in policing, and we would have to go down another path for that. But that's a part of the reason why that book created too. Is internal policing is incredibly against black officers. And when I got promoted and got into the system more, I started seeing the data of what we do in policing and how racist we are internally towards our officers. And where was I going? So the book. So I was trying to lay out what is perfect professional policing. If we do all of our best practices, then we won't have these racist outcomes. So I did my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. It took me years to write that book, and I had the book perfect in my opinion. I had everything down, and I had my bachelor's degree, and I was sitting there and I went, fuck, I didn't learn anything. All of these things perfect still would result in the exact same outcomes. At best case scenario, we make Freddie Gray Khalif Browder. And that doesn't fucking help at all. I mean, if we kill the suspect slowly in a prison cell versus killing him quickly on the street, we're not improving anything, and that's our best case scenario. So I started to try and figure out how we could fix it and where we needed to go, what was going on. So I switched my degrees over to management degrees, because I realized what we had was total mismanagement. Our metrics and incentives weren't aligned at all. And so one of my first most profound discoveries, which is not a discovery fucking at all, but it's readily true on the surface. Crime, I realized as soon as I got into into policing, into management, is a measurement of what a fucking cop does. It is not a measurement of what people do. Okay. And so I was like, duh, of course it is. But what does that mean? What that means is that every fucking time somebody says black men commit more crime, they are literally saying black men are looked at and arrested for crime more. Right. Now the question is fucking why? So when I pursued why, I traced down the history of policing. And basically what I kind of did is this technique called snowballing. So you take the data that you have now and you just start tracing back its sources until you get to the real root of what you're talking about. And so when I applied crime and the criminal justice ideology to that, you get back to the idea that, wait, crime is just a measurement of a cop's activity. The entire criminal justice field is based off of crime statistics, which means your entire field is fucking a religion. And it has no actual information in it whatsoever. So you're making conclusions that are all based off of a false premise that crime is a measurement of criminal activity. And it's fucking not. It's a measurement of what police do. So when you say crime is higher in Baltimore, yeah, there's more cops in Baltimore.
More police, yeah.
Fucking
yeah,
dumb. You know, and they're like, there's no crime in fucking wherever, Nebraska. Yeah. There's one cop.
Like one officer,
you know?
yeah.
So
sheriff,
you
yeah.
start to be like, well, fucking. So then when I trace back the history of policing, well, you're saying, so, well, all right, so we're looking at black guys. Why are we looking at black guys? And so you start tracing the data because that's what they say. Well, we look at black guys because, look, they commit the crimes. Okay, so let's trace back what crime is. And so when I trace back what crime is, the first fucking documented crimes you get on black males is what? Northern cops forming slave patrols and documenting runaway slaves and giving them a citation. So that was your first data. The very first arrest you made was black men for running away, for being runaway slaves. You documented that as a crime. And then the next time you looked at crime, you said, who commits crime? Well, it's these fucking black dudes. So that continued to transcend throughout time into this current state where we all know we have who commits the most crimes in America, which is who is arrested and charged with committing crimes by police the most in America, is the actual thing you're saying, is black males between the ages of 16 and 24 who are the most physically fit to be able to run away as slaves. So that's the first pillar of American policing. When I tried to put together the puzzle of to what we were doing, the first thing that policing does and is premised upon and is formulated is the creation and maintenance of oppressed classes. The first group was the slaves. They hired Irish and Italian cops to do these things. These were the kind of the oppressed whites at the time. They were even called blacks. Most people don't realize that. They were called blacks because black was what stood against white supremacy. So we even changed the concept into an identity, which really meant that whoever is black is who stands against the oppressor. That's really the way it was originally conceptualized. And now it got broken down into this whole complexion thing and identities, blah, blah, blah. But it's an entirely a social construct. It's less than 100 years old. But where was I even going with that?
100 years old, the concept of being black.
Yeah, well, not being black, because you had some people in like the Middle East that would kind of say something like that. But yeah, calling other people black and having it as a category of identification, instead of saying, yeah, the black dude thinking that he was black in other countries, just saying that he was dark or they came from a different area. In America, it started in New York and was specific towards the Italians, the Jews, and the Irish, and blacks, any Hispanics or anything that were over here, because those were the immigrants that were coming over that the Puritans didn't want. So you get the elites have to. So if you're when you're in Sweden, right? And you're trying to other people, they're all white, you have to pick things like, well, neighborhoods. And you have to pick other kind of weird ethnicity things like that. But when you had a country that was all white people that came from different areas, how were you going to distinguish which people were the low class, the oppressed, and who were the favorite and the elites? Well, you had to come up with some kind of concept. So they came up with this black thing, and then they turned it to Spics, they turned it to Jews and kikes and things like that as other things. But it all started off as the same kind of concept that they were all blacks, especially Jews, were just called black, just as black African Americans, or however you want to say it, were. And that happens. That's why you will see Jewish neighborhoods butted up against black neighborhoods now, still to this day in America, constantly, where you'll find a ghetto, you'll find a Jewish enclave butted up next to them, because when we were doing things like home loans, and it's called redlining, I don't think you guys have that in the UK, but in America, they had a redlining when they would give out home loans. they would only give out home loans to these areas on maps that were literally green lined, yellow lined, and red lined for loans, but they put all the blacks and the Jews in the red lined areas, wouldn't give them loans. That's why the Jews in America also control the money, because they had to create their own banking system because they were red lined out of these neighborhoods and things. So the history is all complex in America and what they were doing. So you have that creation of this group of the oppressed, and those are where cops come from. So the ultimate trick of what was white supremacy and is now elite supremacy is to get the oppressed to become the oppressor, to make the house nigger, the slave, the field nigger, the house nigger, as they would say. And we still do that to this day. It's a rough thing to deal with, and I hate being the one that has to bring it up, but that's what we do. So we take the poor, we take the Italians, we take the Jews. Well, Jews didn't want to be cops, but they were invited to if they wanted. And we take black cops now, and we take Hispanic cops now, and we make them cops who execute the oppression on their own people. I was doing that. These are my people. I was executing oppression on my own people. And then to the ultimate thing that we do worse is that we extract resources from those oppressed people to funnel to the elites and to fund our ability to move into a more elite status because we have oppressed our own people. To move into the house is what we do, and I fucking did that. I came from poverty, and now I'm fully established in middle class. I have safety. I have, I could go to the doctor whenever I want. I drive a car whenever I want. And I did that by oppressing brown people as a Marine and by oppressing brown people as a cop. I did that. That's how you ascend. And to think that that's not what we're doing, we're blinding ourselves and being very ignorant to what that first pillar of policing is. And I'm not saying not to go into policing and try to fix it, but you have to face the reality of who we are as that first step.
Take a bow, Mr. Michael, take a bow. So what years was you with the police force from and until?
So I went in 2003 and got out in 2014. Went through a bunch of commissioners.
When you start doing a lot of this research and really looking into what a lot of the things that were going on?
I think it took me a good 5 years to get to what the fuck is going on here. Another year to feel like I had responsibility for that. Part of that was being a supervisor. So I had seen that my officers had a lot of the same problems that I had coming up and were doing the same things. And so it was my responsibility to fix that in this microcosm that I was in control of. And I think I fucked up a way in doing that. I tried to go really hard after bad people so that I could allow my officers the safety to protect the typical people. But I really think now that line was much more blurred than I had given credit for. I fully understand that the line between a murderer, drug dealer, and myself is fucking incredibly thin. And for me to have made that moral judgment off of some other those things was completely not accurate. But that's how I was thinking at the time.
Do you think
the number one is environmental poisoning, which is lead poisoning. So that's lead poisoning dominates the environmental poisoning category. There are others, but currently that dominates. It's the strongest
sorry, was you going to go into it? Yeah, talk to us about that a bit, Michael.
Yeah, so it's the strongest correlate in crime. What happens is children who are exposed to lead through, whether it's through the soil, through the water, through paint, it's roughly a 19-year delay on your crime, because what it does is it affects your developing brain. It reduces the size of your medulla oblongata and your frontal cortex, which lowers your inhibitions, your impulse control. It lowers your IQ. This is a poisoning. This is not the person has a lower IQ. They are fucking poisoned. And so that goes throughout life. And then by the time you're an able-bodied adult male, when those things express themselves, well, then that violence hurts other people, so then you get into the system. And so the vast majority of violence that you see that exists today is correlated from the lead poisoning abatement. Some researchers take it up to 92% of violent crime in America is from lead poisoning. I think it's probably your 40s, from more of the data that I've seen. But if they're tying it into the lead poisoning causes them to go down this pathway, and then this pathway causes this, they could be right in that the lead is the initial causation that kind of made the thing go and snowball going down. So when you go up and you have the impulse control, when you're facing a cop, so Freddie Gray was lead poison victim. A significant portion of police shooting victims are lead poisoned. We don't track the stats, but from anecdotally ones that I've seen in Baltimore, I'm going to think we're probably around 50% of the people that are killed by police are actually lead poisoning victims. And this happens in poor white communities too, so we often forget about that. The poor white communities have that. But they aren't as heavily policed, so they won't have the interaction as likely to occur. And the black communities are heavily policed, plus you have the highest concentration of the lead poisoning. And so if Flint, Michigan, for example, is still being lead poisoning today, you have an absolute guarantee that in 19 years they will still be having a violent crime problem because it's on a delay of that source. So things like that also contribute to what you have to do for solutions, because you have to be thinking in 20-year timeframes at a minimum. You can't be thinking in year-to-year, 5 or even 10-year timeframes for the strongest correlate to violent crime.
Wow. Is there a way, to people that may be, victims of lead poisoning, it's not something that you can kind of detox and flush out your body? If it's there, it's there. That's kind of how it is?
Yeah, I guess that's one of the pinnacle horrors of it is that it's irreversible. Once the damage is done to a child, and it's us poisoning children, because when you're poisoned as an adult, you have medical issues, but not those developing brain issues. You don't have the propensity for violence. Actually, as an adult, you probably would have a propensity for less violence, because people who have mental issues are actually way less likely to commit a violent crime and are way more likely to be victim to a violent crime than perpetrate one. So when we are always, even perception again, when you're worried about the crazy person who's talking to himself in the corner, that dude is incredibly unlikely to ever hurt anyone. But we have fear people like that, and we're entirely misaligned from reality.
So going back to what we were saying earlier, do you not think due to we're going backwards a lot, due to lead poisoning in mainly black people, wouldn't you then say your lieutenant or sergeant or whoever it might be is right then to put you where you was in Baltimore, because these black people have been lead poisoned and that could lead to an episode of violence? So is that not right? It's a bad circle obviously, but is that not the right thing to do at that moment?
Like most cops, the emotions felt when pinning the badge on my uniform for the first time was a source of immense pride, but also a shocking reality to the complication of performing a duty under the weight of such power and responsibility. The callousness of veterans cops and the braggadocious masculinity of the streets are immature expressions of the generations of trauma enacted on our brothers and sisters from a system oppressing us all. My internal fights with policing, whistleblowing, scholarly endeavors, reform efforts, and politics have failed in exhausting fashion.
And what I'm trying to say is that we are looking at people who are doing nothing new, and if we focus on the actions, then we can fix the things for next time. Because when you focus on people, we end up thinking we can chop the head off, they put a new person in and something will change. But if we don't focus on the methodologies and the institutions, then we will be totally missing
somebody, put them in a prison cell, do the paperwork, go back out and do it again. So what we really need is to change the incentives and disincentives so that no matter what the role, we're still going towards that objective that actually serves you.
More occupation, more vehicles, if your answer continues to be violent, because we have to understand that everything about policing is inherently violent. I have come in there with authority and told you what you will do.
I believe one of the reasons behind my struggles is that I had not laid out a consistent and intertwined philosophy of what in the hell I was trying to say. For the philosophical foundations of crime and punishment to be ushered into the 21st century, a reimagination of our institutions is necessary. Building off the famous works of Cesar Beccaria, I construct those pathways to the Enlightenment period of justice. Free will, sanctuary cities, gun control, eyewitness testimony, incarceration, and more must all work together for a prosperous society. Learning these lessons has been a brutal journey for me, and is unlikely to be an easy one for you, but it is one that we owe to the future. to make a safer world for our children to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Crimes and Punishments in the 21st Century by yours truly, Michael Wood, is most conveniently ordered from the evil empire Amazon, because we are in that 21st century after all. For the enhanced and expanded audiobook, check out Audible. In the meantime, the philosophical half of Crime and Punishments, all 40-some chapters and then some, is being presented as a free podcast from iMember Media at imembermedia.com and will be available on all major platforms and direct from the publisher. Pause the video or see the links in the notes and prepare for the challenge and adventure of self-critical thought.
Not what we could have done 30 years ago.
No. So we have another fundamental misalignment, and that is we have known for decades. I think the best proponent of this that shocks most people is Vladimir Putin, who made a public statement. I love everybody to look up what he said in their entirety. There's videos of it. But he ended up going into a room talking about the death penalty and stuff with his scientists, and he came out and he said, look, I gotta admit, violence is not quelled by additional violence at all. The death penalty and prison is not a deterrent to crime. So we have to rethink things. And that's Vladimir Putin. And it's absolutely true. Using violence and prison and incarceration, so additional violence is not a deterrent to crime. It just does not work that way, period, even on a local level. Because, now see, we can rationalize this, but to me, this is already solved. It's a biological malfunction. So if you're violent, the only thing you can do is increase the likelihood that that person goes to a biological malfunction and is also violent. So it's an obvious complete duh to me in my fundamental theories, but just going through normal ideas of what we're talking about, look, man, I'm a fucking stupid male. When you tell me, do not open that door, you fucking assured I'm going to open that door. I don't know when, and I don't know how, but I'm going to fucking find out what's behind that door. And so that's the way it is. I mean, if you could say, we're going to kill you, I mean, let's just think about it. Okay, so somebody rapes your sister, but the death penalty is going to stop you from killing them? Fuck out of here. That's stupid. You know, like, to even think that that's possible is preposterous. Just getting arrested for DUIs stop drunks from going out there and committing DUIs? No. Does locking people up for cigarettes stop them from smoking cigarettes? No. You have to educate people out of things. You know, it's a fucking stupid idea. So the idea that you're putting violence to solve a medical problem is what is hugely our fundamental issue with policing. Policing should be a public health perspective and led by public health leaders. I don't think that I can sell that chip. So I sell the idea of police becoming management as actual managers that are running an organization who are informed and directed their information by public health and controlled by the citizens. Because I think any group of citizens that are an actual equitable representation of the community, if they get a choice to say that their son, who's 12, goes to prison for having a flower in his pocket or has detention and they call you, I think they choose detention and they'll call you. So I'm not concerned about the rules that everyday people make for themselves. What I'm concerned about is the rules that the elite make for everybody else. If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense 100%. Okay. You were talking about the four causations, and you said no police force worldwide is doing it. We touched on one or two.
You touched on one.
Yeah, just the one. Yeah, so let's go for the other three.
Okay, so number two is income inequality. And or you can say asset inequality. It doesn't necessarily mean income, it means access inequality, I guess would be a better term to say it. And so we often associate this with poverty. And that's another thing that is obviously ridiculous on the surface. There are tribes in Africa of hundreds, if not thousands of people who have about $1.50 between them and are completely nonviolent and don't commit any crimes. Poverty is not correlated to crime at all. For one, you have to have a cop to charge a crime. So if you're too poor, I guess you're never going to get crime anyway because you need those police to do that.
So what it's actually is income inequality. It's this disparity, and it's not having no resources yourself. It's not having many resources yourself and somebody else right in front of you having a lot more. So areas like Baltimore are really bad with this because the income inequality is dramatic there. And so that's something that fuels it. There's no middle class in Baltimore. So you either have extreme poverty or you have extreme wealth. And that always leads to causing crime in general. It's not very... All of these things have very loose correlations to violence. You have to separate violent crimes and non-violent crimes. The violence is almost all completely like the same no matter where you go. It doesn't matter about communities. It doesn't matter about races, you know, because they're not real, so it's never going to matter about races. It doesn't matter what you look across. The violence seems to be evenly distributed other than males and females. Well, I mean, for obvious reasons. That's just the way our roles are in this evolutionary society. So yeah, males are more violent than females as a general rule, but that's the only time you see violence distributed differently. The problem comes in the other crimes, property crimes, and then the income inequality can lead to things like malnourishment, which can lead to a biological malfunction. And then you would have the violence, but you're still in biological malfunction, but yeah, you can be fueling it from these other things. But the correlation is just not as strong with that. So you have a lot of property crimes and thefts, assaults, robberies, things like that when you have income inequality close to one another. The third thing is local instability. So we will see this with, it can come in economic policies and things like that, but the most glaring example you'll see in an American conversation is the fatherless. Where are black homes? Where are the black fathers? Well, having a father not in the home is not like correlated to an outcome in the house. It's actually whether the father is involved or not. But the reason we have that stat of the father being taken out of the house is because the police are taking the father out of the house in a situation that's locally unstable. You're taking out a critical member of the family, putting them into a prison cell, reversing the entire income dynamic, the security of what the kid's going through, having two incomes in the household, having somebody home, all those things that we evaluate with like the nuclear family. We think that that's like Western civilization, but it's not Western civilization. It is local stability. It's just being safe and secure in where you are. Those things are obviously correlated to crime for a million reasons that, again, are obvious. The fourth one is the one that is super obvious, but we seem to miss, and that's the police. If the police are there to solve crime, they must be completely focused on eliminating their purpose. So the fundamental purpose of policing should be abolishment. I think that it's rather unrealistic, but that should be the fundamental principle. So if you're any activist and you're not fundamentally rooted in eliminating your purpose, then you are fucking a liar and you're working for the enemy. If you're Sean King and you're getting paid every day long to promote black oppression, you are fucking part of black oppression, my man. And I'm sorry, I will tell it to your face day in and day fucking out. You are the fucking liberal, the white liberal that X warned us of, that will set us down the wrong goddamn path in the face of trying to be pro-black. You're not pro-black, you are anti-black when you are setting up a system like that. You are oppress your own people. You need to be fueling the end of your purpose. My fundamental purpose is to go back to fucking doing whatever the hell I want to do and never having to talk about this shit again, because the Tamir Rice will never be murdered in that way again. That's what I care about. I don't want to fucking have these conversations. I don't want to make money from it. I want to go about normal life. And so I think that fundamental principle must be there with policing and any activism that's trying to achieve any goal. If you're a fucking cancer doctor, your goal should be to eliminate the need for cancer doctors. So we have to set that in with policing, and policing's goal is actually to continue to increase its size. So it has this exact opposite effect. More police will create more violence. Police are violent. They disrupt community stability. They oppress their own people. They extract resources from their community. They sense ripples of trauma, not only through their communities, but through themselves. The police are extremely traumatized as individuals through what they see and go through every day, and they take that back to their families. That's why cops commit suicide. That's why cops are extremely high in domestic violence. I am thoroughly convinced that cops commit crimes at an extremely high rate compared to the general population. I only knew about 4,000 cops total in Baltimore. Over 300 of them were arrested and convicted of crimes. That's roughly 10%. I did not know 10% of Baltimore is not out there fucking committing crimes. I did not know that many people, period, that committed crimes. I participated in the arrest of 496 arrests. A lot of those were the same fucking people. Like, through 11 years, I didn't even charge that many individuals with that. That's crazy. So literally, more of my peers were arrested than I could arrest in my fundamental principle of my job that I was doing every day for a decade. So, and those cops have everything in their system to not get arrested. So if they're at this 10% level, what is reality? I mean, reality is going to be, I think, 50, that are committing crimes on the regular. That's crazy. So that power dynamic, that using violence to do it all, that is not something that can work, period.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, I've heard what you're saying about the police. More police increases crime. You kind of hear these sound bites, but I do really kind of get where you're coming from. Just out of curiosity for myself, the police that got arrested for crimes, was that during their time, was it corruption within the police force, or was it kind of separate issues away at the home or whatever it was?
Right, so here's how police get arrested. Police get arrested, charged, and brought down on them when it can be blamed on them as an individual. When you are indicting the profession, it will do everything it can to protect the officers. So when Freddie Gray was, so for anybody that doesn't know, Freddie Gray was chased down under suspicion of drug dealing or something like that. We don't know what happened about his arrest. I think during the arrest is when he was actually injured. But eventually, so he gets dragged into a van. He gets driven around. By time before they get him to prison, he's dead in the back of the van. That's basically all we actually know about his death. But so what that does is it doesn't pit it on an individual. It puts it on command. Why do police officers have shitty vans? Why do we not have better surveillance of what's going on inside a prisoner treatment? Why is there possibly a way that Freddie could be hurt when the cops have absolute responsibility to transport him in what should be a pretty fucking simple thing to get somebody from point A to point B alive? These things, they say, okay, so we need to be looking at the mayor. We need to be looking at the commissioner. We need to look at policing. And that's when it will come all together, and you will see everybody defend the situation so that they can maintain being in that house. They don't want to go back to the field, so they got to stay in the house, and they unite around that concept. So these cops, for the vast majority of them, were arrested for issues off duty. So DUIs, domestic violence, theft. I would say, I mean, I'm roughhousing it, but I'm going to go with like 25% were on duty. And because mostly when you're on duty, then nobody does anything about it. I know plenty more that would have occurred that were handled administratively for doing things like being drunk. Well, if you got into the police car, if you got to fucking work and you're drunk and we send you home, how the fuck did you get there? Like, I don't need, I mean, we would lock you up if you came in and we're like, hey, I just drove here. I want to file a police report. We'd be like, what, bitch? And we would lock you up. But when a cop does it, they just take him home. They don't, so like anytime you look at those kind of incidences, you would have a lot more. So yeah, but I think the alcohol, the drug use, the domestic violence, I think all that shit is part of that, the ripple of trauma, of violence committed in any community. I mean, it's not, I don't mean it to be victim blaming, and I don't mean it to be like excuse making, but the person cracking the whip has trauma that will affect them. The person pulling the trigger has trauma that will affect them and their family and for the rest of their lives. I know we don't want to have empathy for that, and that's a really difficult thing for me to do. And I fight that very hard with a lot of people, that not only do we need empathy for Freddie Gray, we need empathy for the cop that got involved in that situation and didn't know that Freddie was hurt. We have to have, and was set up by command to do that. We have to have empathy for the cop that pulls the trigger out of complete fear, like not Michael Slager, of course, but there are plenty of other ones where we have to have empathy for the situation that we have put these people in, and we have done it as a society. We pay for police, we want the police, we vote for the police, we encourage our children to become police, we do commercials where we promote them being police officers, but yet when we need to support them, we just throw them out there when we told them their whole lives that they were doing what we asked them to do. And when I came down to Baltimore, I get pissed off a lot when people say, listen to black people, and I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, I listened to black people for 10 years. They're the ones that told me to do this. You're missing everything. My entire chain of command, my sergeant was black, my lieutenant was black, my district commander was black, the mayor was black, the state's attorney was black, the attorney general was black, and the fucking president was black. Like, I'm sorry, I've been listening to black people my whole life. This is not your fucking answer. You need to listen to people, oppressed people, and people who have been subjected to this, to figure out the community's outcomes. And then you need to listen to experts in systems and in how to execute an organization like that. Because I'm sorry, just because you're a victim of police brutality does not mean you know how to fucking fix policing. You don't know the first thing about it. You know how bad it is on the outcome, but you have no idea the system and the machine that is generating this outcome. People like me understand that system, and you got to shut the fuck up and listen when we're trying to explain those systems, just as much as you have to shut the fuck up and listen to a Tawanda Jones trying to tell the pain of a Baltimore community and the outcomes of that, of what we're doing, if that makes sense.
It does. It all follows. It all makes sense. 11 years on the police force. What ways, if you've looked back and reflected and evaluated it, how it must have, in some way, obviously you've done a lot of research on your own thing and you've got your own cause, but it must have impacted you in a negative way. Is there something negatively within you, or a certain mindset thing that you identified maybe a few years ago, and it just kind of stays with you from your time in the police force?
I think I've only gotten to the point where I can acknowledge, and that main acknowledgement, I mean, it came a long time ago, and I'm not sure how much I've evolved since then, is that from policing and from the military, I've become so routine to trauma that I don't have like direct empathy. I don't like associate it with it as much, and I don't associate very well with people having general like complaints about life. Like, you know, if you want to tell me your a 30-minute story about the cop that was rude to you during your traffic ticket, or about how your girlfriend said something mean to you at work, or like I just don't give a fuck. Like, I mean, I've seen a 6-year-old girl with a bullet through her brain, you know, and those are the things that cops go through on the routine. And the trauma of a parent going through something like that, like when you hear a scream like that and you hear people go through those kind of pains and you see how it ripples through and people respond, like, I don't know, like you have no choice but to numb yourself, and you have no choice but to like repress it all, and you have to deal with that at some point in time. And I think it's extremely important that we stop doing that to our people, whether it's Marines or it's police, to stop glorifying trauma, to stop glorifying a good guy with a gun. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun with the good guy with the gun. You're fucking asking me to deal with the trauma of executing somebody because you want to fucking feel cool about having guns in this country. Like that's not something that's very acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to me, the trauma we put our soldiers through for fucking oil profits and to control other resources around the world. I think in 2018, man, we got better ways to do this shit. And the damage we do is the damage that causes the more violence. And if we don't find some way to break out of that loop, The only reason we will have lingering violence is our own fucking stupidity.
Interesting, Michael. I want to ask something. This is, and when I say this is going back, this is going way back. You grew up in the streets, Michael, man. You grew up in the streets. How were you not then a victim of lead poisoning yourself? And how do you even know that? How would you identify that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. So my mom, they had these programs. I don't fucking know what they were called. They were all over. I think they still kind of do it in some areas, but it's like a subsidized housing thing. And so when I was fucking like 2, we moved out to the counties and into a new house. And those new houses have PVC pipes, and there's no lead there. And so the house was built after 1978, so there was no lead paint. So that's why white people aren't as poisoned, because we went through the period of white flight after the civil rights movement, and those houses that were built after 1978 don't have any lead poisoning. The big lead poisoning in America came in 1972. We had the federal CAFE standards, which took the lead out of gasoline. So the biggest issue with violence around the world has been leaded gasoline, putting it into the atmosphere. So in 1972, the federal government in America changed the lead gas standards. And then so that's when you began the dramatic reduction in violence crime in America in the 1990s. In New York, they did the same thing, and they fought it on a local level, block by block, extremely hard. That is why New York is the safest city in America, is because they had the lowest levels of lead poisoning in the entire country. It is not because of anything the police did. Police create violence. They don't solve violence. So it's actually the public health department's there. So then they did that about a decade later. So that's why you saw in the late 90s to early 2000s that rapid decline in violence in New York City. That was their payoff from the 20-year delay of making New York the most lead-free city in the entire United States. Right now, the countries that still use lead, Yemen and Iraq. The countries that were last to get rid of leaded gasoline were Saudi Arabia, Iran, Palestine, and Egypt. So that is where your violence is. Even terrorism is a biological malfunction. These people are lead poisoned as well.
Wow, that's a strong statement, Michael. That's a strong statement.
So as soon as those countries, about 10 years ago, I think it was, at Egypt and Iran and other ones besides Yemen and Yemen and Iraq, they still have leaded gasoline. So as soon as they stop, 19 years later, you will see their violence dramatically reduce, terrorism and all. So in about 10 years, you will see violence dramatically reduce in Egypt, in Palestine, in Saudi Arabia.
And you've done different researches in different places.
The most recent one that was just publicized this year, Australia finally did it too. It's true in America, it's true in Australia, it's true in Japan, it's true in the UK has done it. It's true in Russia, and now we will know that it'll pay off, and it is showed to be true in Egypt and the Middle East and everywhere else.
Ah, that's amazing. What do you tell little Johnny, 6 years old, 7 years old, okay? Now you just said police create violence, they don't solve violence. Johnny's had this thing of being a police officer all his life, and that's really what he wants to go
May as well call him Michael. I mean, that was me.
See, yeah, okay, so imagine you now. Imagine your son, right? So this is your thing, and he sees all these good cops, and it's like, you know what, Dad, I really want to be, I know you don't have a son, I'm just speaking. It's like, I really want to be a police officer. I really want to be a police officer. That's what I really want to do. That's my drive, and I'm going to do it. What do you tell them going into that profession? Do you say don't, or do you give a bit of education on that? So,
by far the most common question I get from actual real people. So if I have 1,000 emails, 500 of them are probably this question from different cops and people that are interested in being police. And I always say the same thing, without a doubt. If you are comfortable with fighting the system internally because it's going to give you a problem, if you're comfortable with creating minor transgressions in a consequential ethics kind of philosophy, I don't have an objection to that. And one real reason is I fucking need you. The reality is you can mitigate some damage on your own, certainly, but it's just on a very local and individual level. It's not going to change the world. But when a place does finally put in a system, I have a system called civilian-led policing, which will probably take a whole other podcast to get into on how I think we should do these things. But if you want to do a system like civilian-led, how how would you possibly change it if you don't have certified police officers who are ready to go and take up the mantle when the call comes out? So at some point in time, look, dude, I fucking think it's 20 years down the line at best, and I wish it was different, but 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, somebody is going to make and pull the trigger on an actual radical reform that will be science-based. And when that happens, you can't pull Joe Schmo off the street to be the one that's going to do the transition. People are going to need something that's comfortable and familiar, and you're the only person that I can possibly use to do that. So I just hope that you can stay as good as possible, and when I put out the call, then you answer that call and go to a city where you were going to do it for real and do it the way you wanted to all along. And then those people, I think eventually you're going to have, that'll be a snowball. Once it starts, other people will start picking it up, and those people will become your experts. So I think it's a pretty path to becoming rich and higher up in policing if you really want to think about it, because if you have the right mentality and the right philosophy now, I think you're positioning yourself right for the future. So even from a myopic perspective, kid, I don't care your intentions. I care that you do the right thing. So even if you just want a nice path to maybe be a chief and pursue it through that kind of avenue of doing the right thing, sure, take up that message. I don't care your motivation.
Okay. Do you think they can do the right thing though, with a commander, say, that's been there 25 years and that wants things done his way, by the book? Do you think you can progress through the policing force with this new mindset that you want to, or are trying to say to instill?
Yeah, totally. I don't think police want to do this for the vast majority. Police, yeah, I mean, so sure, I lose a lot of friends and they don't talk to me. But the reason they don't talk to me is because of how they will be treated by others. It's really never seems to be like an actual personal animosity. It's that, you know, I crossed the thin blue line, I cheated, I broke the club, you know, those kind of things, where it's not actually based on the merit of anything I say or any of the ideas. It's just bullshit, which I mean, I totally get it. It's fine. But when those people are presented, so as manager, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that everywhere you look, people behave by their subconscious incentives and disincentives. So as long as you set those things up and enable people to do things that are, if you incentivize people to do good, they do good. We incentivize good people to do bad, and they do bad. I mean, that's pretty much basically how it works. So I really think that these things are just basic management issues when if you give cops the opportunity to be good, the vast majority will. It's just fundamentally at this point in time, cops, whether they're in the UK or in America, they don't have a pathway to being a good cop. If they try to be a good cop, they're going to get kicked out of the system. They're going to be ostracized. Their career prospects in the future are going to be damaged. Even going to other employment, they're going to have issues because they're seen as a whistleblower. You know, nobody wants to fucking hire me. I'm a whistleblower. I'll tell on you, you know. So those kind of things linger. And if we create, we need to be focused not more on who gets equality. We have to be focused on making platforms where we have an equitable distribution of equality, which means whoever needs to be given equal is given equal, and not just willy-nilly because I'm black or because I'm this. It would be because you are being subjected to more policing. Like right now, what we want to do things is often like black neighborhoods need different policing. No, all neighborhoods need different policing. Now, yes, they're going to be focused on black neighborhoods now because that's the category you're in, but eventually it's not going to be you. It's going to be somebody else. And we have to have systems which continue to create platforms for the weakest to put their ideas onto the table so that they can be implemented for everybody else. And I think that that's fundamentally what I fight for, is systems that enable the right thing to be done. I'm not fucking telling you the right thing to be done. I don't know the right thing to be done. I don't know your neighborhood. I don't know your neighbors. I don't know your community's goals. And to ask me is the exact wrong question. What you need to do is ask me how you get done what you want to get done. That is what I can do, and people like me can do, CEOs of businesses and managers. And we can make a system where you'll get the outcome that you want. But to ask us the outcome is a ridiculous concept. Don't ask me how you will be policed. Tell me.
Yeah, with you. Agree with that 100%. All right, so going forward, what's next for you, Michael? What's next? Obviously, you said civilian-led is something that you've got in the pipeline. Is there anything else that's going on?
So fundamentally, what's next for me is I think I have a personal path and I have the path of when other people are ready. I spent about 3 years really pushing the envelope. And if somebody perceives me, they're going to chase us down, like starts going down the rabbit hole. You're going to see a lot of people talking a lot of shit about me. You're going to hear completely fabricated shit about me. You're going to hear all kinds of attacks. And that is because I'm trying to do something that is not conducive at this moment. And I've been trying to push buttons to see where we are, to see what's going on, and to know where we can have avenues and angles. And I don't see avenues and angles right now. I think as a general, maybe a mayor or somebody like that can step up and suddenly do a radical thing, but I don't think any communities are ready for radical solutions right now, just as our culture. So I'm a servant. I'm not here to tell you what to do. And when a city asks for me to go help them, I intend on dropping what I'm doing and helping them as much as I can. But I've developed a lot of the educational material. I've developed the philosophy already. And so I really think it's up for people to pursue that and need to take up the mantle themselves and be the voice in their local community. Now, they can call on me to answer questions and to help them guide through and to be there as a consultant. But this has to be your project. It cannot be my project. So if and I thought maybe it was before, but I just think that now I think that's just the wrong way to go about it. I need to keep making sure I have better answers. So I'm wrapping up my PhD now, doing my final study on that. I have some papers I have to write on those 4 correlates, so I can put that into the scientific literature right now instead of just papers that I put out. That takes it's a big process to go through all that. And I'm contemplating personally just going to ASU, going to law school, and maybe being a public defender and kind of just doing shit where I can be a blunt instrument, because I am a blunt instrument, and I realize I'm not really, I don't think I'm the best voice. I can, like with you, it's fine. We're the same culture. We can have these conversations and not take offense, but I can't do this on a public level. I think each particular kind of group, ethnicity, local area, they need to take up and filter the messages in their own way. So I can be a blunt I can still be a blunt instrument being a public defender and at least change a few lives directly, while I think other people need to change the lives in their own community, and I will be there entirely to assist them.
So they take the fundamentals of what you've kind of delivered and you've put together, that they deliver in their own way, because they know ground, and they have boots on the ground, and they know exactly what's going on. Love it.
I'm not here to make money. I'm here to get the fuck out. White privilege is enjoyable. So I would like a system to go in place that seeks to end that process and allows me to live out the remaining advantages of it. That would be the most honest, nice thing I could really say. And that's why I would love to get this thing going, so I cannot fucking worry about it. I mean, seriously, I've been stressed and worrying about it and fucking trying to figure this shit out, trying to present it in ways that are palatable, trying to dig into the science and get it out there. But I mean, I just think I'm a fucking bad instrument for it.
Okay, well, we'll leave it at that. I mean, we're going to get you back on, Michael. I'm going to definitely get you back on to talk about the civilian-led project and just some more.
Yeah, so then those people take that and do it. England bases shit off of Sir Robert Peel, and it's fucking bullshit. Like, that is not the way to do it. So if you want to get into the philosophies, I did write a whole book on this called Crimes and Punishments in the 21st Century. Okay. So in that book, I get into all the philosophies. So why do we treat suicide this way? It's all a series of small essays. So you can just take one chunk out of it and read a page. And some of these ideas are 5 pages. So like the desire to punish. Why do we as people want to punish people? So I explained that philosophically, and then how we need to change, or how we could change our philosophy to be a different way. And those take things in nuance. And then there are things like prostitution, where I think that's like 4 sentences at most, which is pretty much, fuck off. What are you talking about arresting people for having sex? Get the fuck out of here. That's a ridiculous idea. So, you know, and it's written more professionally on a scholarly level, but that's essentially what it's saying. That's exactly what it's saying. So I like encourage people to go in there, because it talks about what's wrong with Peel. It talks about like what we should do with gun control. Like, I don't even think you guys have a better answer. It's not the fucking answer. But to do so, the first chapter is free will, because when we're talking about like this fundamental thing, we think, oh, we have to have police go into a neighborhood because there's crime, and we need to use what is essentially violence to deter violence and crime, and that fundamentally does not work. We have been proven that time and time and time again. We've known this for fucking decades. Like, you're not going to find any scientist that says, yeah, violence solves violence. I mean, it's literally a ridiculous idea. So if where the fuck was I even going with that? What did I say?
Talking about the book.
Free will. So fundamentally, we don't have individual responsibility when it comes to doing something like violence. We have to backtrack all the way down to what is free will, and do we have free will? So the first chapter is my argument that no, we do not have free will. It's not a thing. People are the combination of their DNA and their experiences. So what that does is, sure, it does eliminate philosophically somebody's individual responsibility for doing something. But what it does that I think is incredibly more important is it enhances your responsibility to change the experiences of other people so that they have better outcomes. You cannot change their mentality and what they are going through. But the one thing you can fucking change is just having these conversations, having these ideas in your head, and changing the experiences of other people. If you do not present to somebody a different option, they will never be able to evolve to a different option. So all of the responsibility for us is to interact with other human beings in a way that we can provide better experiences for them. And in return, that will make them literally a better person, in which they will literally end up providing better experiences for us. It is like the key of what karma is, that it's not going to be directly attached. There's no fucking spirit flying around, and it's not tangible. But we directly influence the outcomes of every single person we interact with. And it seems dumb and like, no, come on, I don't have responsibility for that. No, you don't have responsibility for when you freak out and murder somebody, but you do have responsibility for providing better experiences so that other people aren't in positions where we know that they have environmental poisoning, they are subject to income inequality, they have local instability, and they have police around them. We have that responsibility.
And that's in the book, right?
That's in the book. That's chapter 1, baby.
I love it.
You know, so
right,
like
let's do
that's
this.
just the way it has to be.
Let's do this. Let me read upon the book, and let's get you back, and then we'll talk a bit about that, and we'll talk about some other shit that we never covered. But
talk about all kinds of shit.
I had this. I put good notes together about Michael's story, but no, this was even better. I mean, Michael, thank you, and thank you for this conversation. You know, it's really got me thinking about certain things, and especially a lot of what I do. I'm not really going to go into it. I lead a community organization, so the community stuff was bang on, and I'm going to take it back and definitely implement some ideas, and we'll do this again, brother.
No, just don't. I would love to do it again, and be careful with some of the crazy shit that I say. I don't know how somebody's going to handle that, because, like, I mean, we got to go. I get it. Biological malfunction. What is being trans and wanting to change your sexual orientation?
Tell them, Mike, what is it? Or we're going to leave that till next time.
I mean, everybody else can think about it, but I mean, so suicide is wrong, and it's a biological malfunction. Any violence committed upon yourself is a biological malfunction. Is this violence on my arms a biological malfunction that I did to myself? Absolutely. And I fucking like it, and it's not harming anybody else, so who fucking cares? But if that did harm somebody else, then that would be a problem that we need to address for other people. So does society need to address my mental issue with committing self-violence? No. But is this self-violence? Fuck yeah.
Crazy. That's crazy. Or Jesse would say, that's amazing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh, what's a man? What's a man?
You know, I'm going to come in and say some stuff. I'm going to be like...
Yo, you should have started it with that. I would have fucking died. So, he wants me to go back on, and I'll go back on one day. And actually, so, like, I have mixed feelings about him, because as I've gotten to know him better and see more, I see what he's doing. I get it. and I don't think he has malice. I think he's incredibly uninformed, and the most fucked up thing that he does is corner people that have no
Yeah, he
ability to
does that a
defend
lot.
themselves. Like, he cornered like an 18-year-old college girl with her philosophy, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
wrong. Like, I feel like bad about this. Like, don't do
What's
that.
a man?
But
Are you a man? He does this really weird thing with questions too. Like he's a different. This is complete.
it's hard. Like, it's hard to even talk about him because, like, we're gonna encourage people to look at him, which is a terrible thing to do. But he's like, almost, I don't know if it's like watching a car crash or if it's like watching Trump troll people, but he's a pretty good troll, and it's sadly fucking humorous.
You know what? He's hilarious. I went through like a playlist. I don't even know what I was doing.
I did too. Like, everybody I know has gone down the rabbit hole of Jesse Lee Peterson videos.
Jesse is like, no, please do go back on though.
I want to so bad, so I want to like say stuff to him. I want to answer like, "What's a man?" and I want to be like, "Oh, that's amazing!" every time he says something to me. But I like him. Like, I've ran into him a few times, and like, I like him. I like as a off camera. I like him.
He's a different character.
Yeah. So it's like I definitely want to have that conversation again, but I'm totally going to handle that much differently. And see if, he has a whole anti-gay thing and all that stuff. So I think I want to play like up those angles, be more humorous and like be flirtatious with him and like fucking make him uncomfortable and shit.
You probably won't air it out.
Yeah, they'd be like, "What's a man?"
Yeah, he'll be like, no. Are you a man? Are you? Like, that's crazy.
He's like, "What's a man?" I'm gonna be like, "Fuck, you a man, Jesse." Damn. That should be too funny.
Are you going to go on to where he's kind of sitting, like the second one you did, or would it be more like, because he's got...
No, he won't do it to me on Skype.
Okay.
So I think he knows. Okay. So that's, the Skype ones are live. So he did cut out stuff from our first interview. Okay. So I hold on to that, and I hold it over his head. So I said something, he was talking about people being criminals. And so I pointed out a crime that he commits on the regular.
Okay.
And I can easily prove it and whatever it is. So I said, I guarantee you fucking cut that out of your video. And of course he did cut it out of his video, but I had my phone recording the whole time. I have the whole fucking thing. So I keep fucking with him that I recorded that. You cut it out of the show, but I do have it. And I do have it. And so, I mean, I'm not looking to try like make a big issue out of it. But I love having it to hold over his head.
You're trolling the troll. How can you troll the troll?
Yeah, so I gotta I want to see that next time.
No, but I can't wait. But no,
all right, brother. So we're scheduling the next one. Also, like any questions you have, and any questions any audience member have, anybody comments on YouTube or any dumb shit like that, I'll hit anything. And people can say dumb shit about, like, I don't care if they say, "Did you take money when you were in Standing Rock?" which like people accuse me of, and the answer will be fuck no, and we can explore it. I don't give a shit. There's nothing that is off limits. Anybody wants to address any slander, any rumors, any fucking ideas, quiz me on anything about whatever. It does not matter. Nothing should be off the table. That's like the only role I can really have in this whole thing.
So if anybody sees this, everybody that does see it, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, any questions you have, if you don't want to go straight to Michael, come to me, and the next time we schedule it, I'll list them all off, and he'll give you an answer. You see, he's a straight shooter, and we'll go for it, man. Let's do this. Let's do this, brother.
All right, brother. Be good. Peace.
You too. All right. Take care.
All right.
The bottom line is that money makes things happen. Time truly is money. That is what it represents. It takes a lifestyle to put out these materials, and the system has no desire to allow us to pay our bills. Many of us are in that boat these days. The good news is that, seriously, time is money. If you have no time and too much money, Please donate to the Patreon, to Stay Up News, or to iMember Media. If you have no money and some time, that is every bit as helpful and valuable. To me, it is priceless for you to share this and other critical thinking with everyone you know and to have those challenging conversations. StayUp.News is a revolutionary media project that seeks to document social and political issues through hip-hop, amplifying the voices of persons from sectors of society that often go ignored in the process of news gathering, and doing so in a language that is intimately familiar to them. Stay Up News seeks to use hip-hop as a tool for exploring social and political issues and centering the voices of persons living those issues, thus allowing them to express themselves in their own language and allowing the audience to determine their own responses to those issues on the basis of having heard directly from those most impacted. The amount and quality of extensive news, background, podcasts, and interviews on Stay Up is an example of dedicated excellence.
full of change. Said I just got day today, got me a pocket full of change. These like working hard all day, just getting my shoes to take my pay. I was born my papa's son, when I hit the ground I was on the run. One glad hand, the other behind, reaching out yours to give me mine. When the hounds are talking in the black of the night, and in my pocket every day.
dry day on Wednesday with sunny periods. However, there may be more cloud in the southeast where it will be breezier. After a chilly start, it will be mostly dry on Thursday with some sunny spells. However, it may be rather cloudy in the southeast. Patchy rain will arrive in the north.